what I love. All right. Hello, I'm Scruffy, and today I'm going to be sharing how to keep loving games while making their audio. So, a little bit about me first. I'm Scruffy. I am a composer and sound designer for video games, and I'm also a video editor and a 2D and 3D artist who creates a video series just about the general subject of composing for video games. I'm currently with the team at Curiomatic, doing sound effects and music, and pretty soon mixing the voice acting for Roland Rascal. I helped orchestrate some of the music for Frog Song by Frog Team Games, and now I'm the lead composer on their next game, Stomp and the Sword of Miracles. And I've been helping out Stein van Wakkeren on their game, $5 for the Bus. But I think some people watching this presentation might be a little more familiar with my work on the What I Love video series that I publish on YouTube. In that series, I look at particular games and then zero in on some specific aspect of their music or their sound design or sometimes their visual design, and just highlight how that's really cool and how people should listen out for it the next time they play that game. And I try to make these videos as handmade and personalized as I can. So I write the scripts, I narrate the scripts, I produce all the visual assets that I can for the video, except where I have to play gameplay footage. And it's all on a shoestring budget. I spend very little to make these videos. It's just a lot of time and a lot of work. So, naturally, I end up facing some challenges while working on all of this. Perhaps I know what I need to do on a particular day, what task needs to come next, but I just can't seem to find any momentum on it. Maybe an idea fizzles out after like an hour of trying at it. On other days, maybe I have the drive, the motivation, and the endurance to see something through to the end, but it's an irrelevant idea. It doesn't really pertain to a video or a game that I'm working on. It's just some personal project that I suddenly feel that I need to complete. And other days, despite the best intentions of the wonderful teams that I'm working with, the broader industry that we're all working at hands us some bad news or some bad luck. And that can cause the greatest challenge of all to rear its head, which is, what do I do next? Where do I go from here? Is this even worth it? Like, do I even like video games, or am I just required to like them because that's my job? But in spite of those challenges, yes, I have convinced myself I do still love what I do. In fact, sometimes it's more than loving what I'm doing. Sometimes an idea is so compelling, or something that I find in a game is just so cool that I feel like if I don't tell someone about it, I'm going to explode. So, yes, I still love what I do, and I want to share just some general practices that I try to follow to keep myself motivated while working on all of this and to keep myself loving what I do. It will mainly be coming from my perspective as a music and sound designer, but I feel that some of this can apply to like any job that you perform while developing a video game. And I'll have a couple audio examples as well. I just want to give a caveat. We tested the audio and it works. It should work, but Google Slides has this funny little tendency to like pause audio while it loads, so just keep that in mind. So first, we're going to talk about loving the games that already exist, loving games as they are as you play them. So, I want to recommend that you play games like you mean it. And by this, I don't want to imply that the way you've currently been playing any video game is incorrect. You know, there's no wrong way to do it. And I'm guessing quite a bit of you are game developers or aspiring game developers. So you're probably already following the advice that I'm about to give. But by playing games like you mean it, I'm trying to go for a happy medium between the extremes of playing a game merely for fun or escape or to get some sense of like control, and the other extreme of treating a game purely as research, as though it's homework from which you glean information about how to create a game. Something that happens to me pretty often in the music sphere is that someone will approach me wanting to start learning how to be a musician, and they'll say to me, "Scruffy, I'm not a musician. I don't have any musical talent. I don't know the first thing about music theory, but I have this band that I really like, especially a couple songs by that band. And they've given me some rough ideas for some songs that I'd like to write eventually, and I need to know where to begin. Where do I take those ideas?" And I would say to them, you already are a musician. Like, you've already taken the first step, which is that you have developed your ear enough that you can discern sounds that you like, sounds that you prefer over other sounds. Because once you have that foot in the door, you can start to think about why those sounds are preferable to you. That starts you thinking about song structure or instruments that you like over others. And eventually that leads to the first steps of learning music theory, learning song structure itself, learning how to be a musician and craft things. So that's the approach that I mean by playing games like you mean it. Although with games, it's a little more complicated because games are art that is gamified. They relinquish some control to the audience. And because of that, even when you're playing your favorite genre or even your favorite game itself, you will experience emotions that aren't just preference. You will lose your favorite game. You will get lost or confused about your favorite genre of game. You can get stressed or frustrated. You can even get jump scared by your favorite game. It's like a weird, wide range of emotions that we experience about games. But I believe that they are all equally germane to loving a game, to truly understanding and feeling passionate about a game. I would not have been able to make, any of the videos that I've made, but especially not the recent videos that I've made about Outer Wilds, which is one of my favorite games, without feeling emotions and exploring those emotions that in a game review might be considered negative emotions. For a while, I didn't know where to go next in the game. For a while, I felt pretty lost. But I think that is as important to explore and analyze to yourself as the best parts of the game, the parts that you remember the most. So, I recommend that you try transcribing a game. This is a term that comes from public speaking, but with my background as a jazz pianist, it mainly refers to listening to one of the jazz greats play like a solo, and just listening back to it over and over and trying to write down what I think is going on. I believe that that's the single greatest exercise that a musician can perform, especially if they're learning to improvise on a piano. And I think it can apply to video games. If you like a game the first time you play it, and just the first time you play it, don't play it like you mean it. Just play it for fun. Just have fun with it, enjoy it. Don't overthink it. The second time you play through it, and the third time you play through it, try to suss out what exactly is happening behind the scenes of that game. How a particular animation might be working. How they got a particular effect to look that way. Or how a soundscape is being crafted around you. The more you do that, the more you hypothesize about it, the more you're going to understand that game. And the more the negative experiences you have with that game are going to become positive ones. So, yes, try to transcribe the games that you're working on. You can always, if you're really curious about a game, ask the developers about that game. See if maybe they can give you a little snippet of what they worked on, or even some of the code of the game if it's available. But I also think that's a bit akin to turning to the back of the book and looking at all the answers for any puzzles in that book. So yeah, try to transcribe some games, and I promise you, any experience that you have with that game, good or bad, you will remember it, you will feel more passion for it, you will cherish it a bit more, and you can love what you're playing. And again, I would not have made any of the videos that I've made thus far without following that notion. So, next I want to address how to love games that don't exist yet. Games that are only in your head, that maybe you've had this idea for a while, you really want to either create it or see someone else bring it to fruition. So here's another trendy phrase. I want you to transcend, cut, copy, and paste. And I don't mean the literal computer functions. Those are essential. Those are really useful, obviously. But by transcending cut, copy, and paste, I'm talking more about abstract ideas, the abstract notions of what should be done in a game that we have as we're conceiving one. Because we typically tend to do one of two things with those. We either try to copy and paste the idea, which is take the idea exactly as we found it and try to actualize it with no changes, just try to make it absolutely perfect and bring it into reality. That is impossible and that is unfeasible with the resources that we have. Or we cut the idea. We decide that this is not a good idea, this was never a good idea, and we never want to use it again. We never want to see it again. We tend to do that a lot with game ideas, and I believe that's both a bit hasty and a bit mean to ourselves. So I'd first like to recommend that we journal all of the stories that we take in, just in case. They can be, stories that you literally see from a movie or a game, or a friend organically tells you a story, or it can be stories that kind of exist in the world. If the view out your window on a particular day strikes you, just write down a little note about it. Or if you interpret a song in a particular way, and maybe it's a bit different from how your friends are interpreting that song, then write down your thoughts about it. One of my favorites is to journal your dreams and your nightmares. One game idea that I've had for a long time that I really want to bring to fruition someday, it's called Swine's Bluff, and it was based on a nightmare that I had about a first-person view of just traveling down this Pacific Northwest bluff to get to this observatory, and all the while all the terrain is just melting everywhere and the audio is sinking into subsonic sounds. It was really strange, but I consider myself really lucky for having a nightmare that translates itself pretty well into a vignette horror game. But I would also be lying to you if I said I was just trying to bring that exact nightmare into reality. Because at first I wanted to do that. I didn't want to tarnish any of that nightmare that I had. I wanted to make it as natural as possible. But now I realize that's a bit unfeasible, as evidenced by I haven't made the game yet. But that's okay, because when I do make that game, it will not be just that one idea. It will be a blend of all sorts of different ideas that I've had that work together. So once you have this journal of all these different stories that you could possibly create for yourself or iterate on, corroborate and defend any ideas that you get from yourself. Take whatever game ideas spring out of those stories and think to yourself, why is this a good idea? Why do I think this could work as a game? Or why do I think this couldn't work as a game? What could I change about it to make it work as a game? I ask that you do this because that's exactly what you would do if you were on a game dev team, right? Everyone would be bringing in their own ideas, and all of those ideas deserve to at least be heard and respected and attempt to implement them in some regard, to some degree, even if they need a bit of change. So I offer a mantra that I bring up to myself a lot, especially while composing music, which is, wouldn't it be cool if? It's a very useful phrase because it helps strengthen an idea that you want to promote to yourself, but it also helps soften the blow of an idea that needs change. I'm going to give an example from working on Rollin' Rascal here. This is Pastry Paradise. It is an online multiplayer race course that is one of the stages that the team has put together. It's one of the simpler ones. It's just, a donut that you race around. You can see all the different rascals currently racing around it. They needed music for this stage. So I start to think, okay, it needs to be, high energy. It needs to engage you and accelerate you, but it also needs to sound sugary somehow, like donuts, chocolate, these fluffy, like sugary clouds. It needs to do something with all of that. Eventually, I decide, wouldn't it be cool if I used electro swing for this racetrack? The electronic beat is good at accelerating you, but the sweet, saccharine harmonies of early to mid 20th century jazz are good at portraying, in my mind, sugar. So first of all, I didn't want any copyright issues, but also I didn't want to just take a sample of early jazz from the 20th century. So I suppose this isn't exactly electro swing that I ended up composing, but I ended up writing a jazz tune of my own that sounds vintage, that leans into some kind of cheesy or excessively sweet harmonies. And I got to the end, and I already really liked the jazz tune that I had written before I even added the beat on top of it. So then I start to add the beat, and I think to myself again, wouldn't it be cool if the beat only came around if you were already at high speed in the race? We already had a system in Rollin' Rascal where more music gets added on top of what's already playing when you're at high speed, and only while you're at high speed. So what if you had to earn the electro part of electro swing? You could only hear that part while you're traveling at speed. And that completed the piece. That allowed me that made me know exactly what to add next, where to finish it, and I think that that was the final touch that made the team say yes to this track. Because I had to be hear me out, please. What if this were electro swing? What if the electro part only came at high speed? I'm going to give you a sample of it. So it's a cheesy, kind of leisurely jazz tune. It's kind of based on what you hear in that sort of era. But at high speed, beat comes in to accelerate it a bit, give you some momentum. You're already winning the race, right? But when you hit a wall, suddenly it's gone. And that delta feels so bad. Suddenly all your momentum's gone, the wind that was behind you from that beat is suddenly gone. And I cannot tell you how much it drives you to do better at the race because you want that beat back. So I got there because I had multiple ideas circling around, and I glued them together with the idea of wouldn't it be cool if. So next, I'd like to talk about loving games that are somewhere in between those two. They don't exist yet, but they also are more than just an idea now. You've got some assets working. Maybe you've got some multiple people working on this game. And I think we can all agree, these are the hardest games to love. Because you have to keep the passion going all the way to the finish line, or else at some point you might decide, this isn't worth it anymore. And you would waste a bunch of effort and really cool assets that went into that game. So, how do you love games that are currently in development? Well, I believe you should make the process fun in itself. That's the best way to keep the motivation going on, to keep the momentum going on a game that you're developing. And for that, you can borrow from other media, other milieu of media that are in themselves fun and that feel authentic already. And I know this phrase might seem a little reductive. I only intend this to be a phrase that you keep in mind as you're developing a video game. You know, this is not a catch-all statement, but video games are essentially film plus toys. That's essentially what they're made of. They take the cinematic, linear dissemination of narrative and design from film, but they also take the physical interactions and the make your own fun spirit from physical toys. So there are plenty of ideas that already exist in these two worlds that you can borrow from. This is also going to be the part of the presentation where I start nerding out about a bunch of games that I think are really cool, that borrow from these ideas, and I think you should try them out. So, we can take it from film. For example, I've made a video about this before, invisible sounds. By invisible, it doesn't mean that you can't hear it or that you can't see it necessarily. It means that it's so subtle, a sound is so subtle, or music is so subtle, and ingrained into the world that the audience doesn't really even think to notice it unless they're actively looking for it. A great example is footstep sounds, right? Because you don't really notice that they're there, you just kind of expect that they're there. But if the footstep on a particular type of terrain sounded off, like if you constantly sounded, as I do on this carpet, like you were slipping across ice, that would seem a little out of place. That would seem a little visible. This is all over the place in film. And any game that wants to replicate the feeling of film, to make it a bit more cinematic, to make it a bit larger than it is, to make it feel realistic, will design all sorts of invisible sounds. And music. Music can be invisible as well. There can be a cue in a film that is so quiet or so subtle or portrays the emotion in the scene so correctly that we don't even notice it. It just passes by. Or there can be music that sounds like it's coming from the world anyway. You know, we typically don't tend to notice that indoor spaces are piping in music very often, but a lot of them are. If you take a look at the hub worlds and the lobbies in the Splatoon series, they are really good at conveying some invisible sounds that still end up making the world feel richer. And the idea is, while they were developing the game, I have a feeling that implementing those sounds made the world feel more authentic to them. It made the world feel more legitimate to the developers. And that helped them create the world and create it to such a level of detail as they did. Go ahead. On the other end, there are sounds, especially from animated films and cartoons, that are so clear, so expressive, so well-timed and well-paced to the action that they describe that we can't help but notice them and even laugh at them. I call these cartoonishly clear sounds. My favorite example of this implemented in a video game is from Mario Baseball. When you strike a hit in Mario Baseball and it goes flying out into the outfield, they didn't have to add this, but they added a synthesized whistle sound that tracks its trajectory, its altitude. So when you hit a ball, you'll hear it going, you know, and that's an extremely cartoonish sound. It's very silly, but it's also so compelling that you would miss it if it's gone, first of all, and eventually you can start to predict if a ball is going to be a fair ball or caught as an out just by like listening to that trajectory and predicting when it's going to stop. Another great example across like cartoonish video games is mushrooms. By the bylaws of all video games, if you put a mushroom in your game, it has to be bouncy on top. You have to be able to jump off of it, right? So you don't hear like field recorded sounds of the cap of a mushroom as you jump on one. You will always hear an extremely bouncy, elevated sort of sound, often added with like synthesizers or even like really old sound effects, like Hanna-Barbera collections of sound effects. Isn't it strange that those sound effects are so riveting that they're over half a century old? They're more than half a century old, and we still use them all the time. That's the power of these sounds. They're so clear that using them in your game will just make you want to perform that action more. It affirms or confirms a particular action in the game. I have two examples of this that I've applied to my own music. They're both from $5 for the Bus. The first one is from a library. It's just a normal public library, but as you explore it and you're trying to find a particular piece of information in it, it sprawls out into a dungeon, like a classic RPG dungeon that you have to traverse. I needed the vibes to be pretty chill here, so it's got a string quartet in it. It's kind of neoclassical, but kind of a slow jam. But there's one element that I added to it that is cartoonish, because I thought, what better sound for trying to find something in a library than leafing through a book? So I ended up using that as percussion. So it's subtle, it's a bit quiet, but there's the sound of leafing through a book in the background. And that was the sound that put this piece together. That was the icing on the cake. Once I had that implemented, I knew where to go with the rest of the piece. It worked out very well. And Stein thought the same. The same goes for another piece that I composed for this game, in which you're at an internet cafe, you're using a computer. The key item that you need is something you have to print out. But it's a very old computer, and it's sort of a mini game in itself, navigating the outdated UI. So to make it cartoonishly clear how old this computer was, I challenged myself to compose something using only Microsoft General MIDI, and used a filter that made it sound like it was coming from the computer's internal speakers. It's so cheesy. It's so dated, but I love it. And it's not a challenge to compose music like this, to intend to be silly. But sometimes you've got to draw from ideas that originated in cartoons like that to make your own game fun, fun to continue. Now, another element of film that I haven't brought up in my videos before, but I really want to just nerd out about here, is called sound advances. In simplest possible terms, this is just a sound that you hear before you see what's making the sound on the screen. That's it. If we sat someone down who had never seen a film before, and they watched a transition between, let's say, a park scene, and it fades out and then fades into a schoolyard, they would be like, what am I watching? Why did the park just morph into the school? What's going on? Nowadays, of course, we obviously understand that's just a transitional tool to blend between two scenes and kind of skip the time between them. But one reason that we understand that so well is the film's sound, which would start with sounds of the park, and then before the schoolyard actually appears on the screen, we would start to hear school bells, children playing or laughing, something like that. A sound that starts indicating to us what we're about to see. This is all over video games, as you can imagine, sometimes by accident, just because of the way 3D sound is implemented in a world. But it is specifically, deliberately, really good at conveying information in video games with rooms, such as a 2D game where you're in a static room, and once you get to the end of the screen, the camera pops over to the next room. I'd like to bring up a famous example of this. Cornifer in Hollow Knight. So in Hollow Knight, you are traversing Metroid-like rooms with a bunch of enemies in them, and you don't have any way to map that other than your memory until you get to Cornifer. Once you meet Cornifer, he will update your map. So it's a really good thing. And whenever you're in a room with Cornifer in it, before you even see Cornifer, you will hear this singing. So quaint. I just had to include it in this presentation. So you'll hear that chipper little tune that Cornifer is singing before you even see any of the parchment that's falling from where they're standing, or before you even talk to Cornifer. And that was so compelling. It inspired such a feeling of relief when you get to a room with Cornifer in it that I think Team Cherry recognized that, because in their next game, Silksong, you've got a same archetype of character. Chakra now sings as well. And isn't it interesting that, it was such a good idea to them that they implemented it in the same way in their next game, just with a different character. That's the sort of thing that's going on with sound advances. And I hope that I've already inspired you to start thinking about how you could give the audience an advance of what's coming in a game idea that you have by, just giving an audio or even a visual clue that it's about to happen. Another game that I've been playing a lot recently, Rain World, is really good at sound advances, because the camera's always static, it pops between different sections of the environment, so it's really good at incrementally adding audio to a scene to prepare you for something. And if an enemy is in the next room, you will hear music with layers that are based on what type of enemy you're about to encounter. I believe the developers called it threat music. And it's really helpful because you are pretty helpless against those enemies in Rain World. So it helps you to know what's coming in the next room. Now, I also think, you can take all these ideas. They've originally come from the world of film, and they will make you feel more like a filmmaker as you're creating a game, which I think inspires some authority as you create. But you can also take plenty of ideas from the world of physical toys. I love physical toys. They're so interesting and they make such great, satisfying sounds. And I think a lot of recent games, in the indie scene especially, agree with me on that. My favorite example of a game that brings together a bunch of sounds that are toy-like is Unpacking. Unpacking was designed, the sound was designed by Jeff and Angela Van Dyke, and all you're doing in the game is clicking and dragging objects to place them into a house that you're moving into. You're taking them out of boxes, you're dragging them to where you want them. But Jeff and Angela designed, over 14,000 different little sounds that come with every object that you're placing in these games. If it's fabric and it's going down on a ceramic surface, that's one particular sound. If it's a pan and it's going down on a wood surface, that's one particular sound. I believe they have 15 different surfaces and then hundreds of different objects that they had to design fully for. They might even add sweetener sounds, like if there's pencils in a cup, then you'd hear a little bit of shaking from the pencils for that cup. So, first of all, that's insane dedication. No need to go that far, but I believe that with those sounds implemented, it started to feel like a real video game at that point. Because before that, it's just clicking and dragging. But once you've got a tiny little tactile sound added onto that action, it feels legitimate, it feels complete. The same thing goes for Peak. And Peak has a lot smaller collection of sound effects. It never needs to be 14,000 plus. That's just, it's crazy cool. I believe Felix Peasley is the sound designer for Peak, and even just the main action in that game, which is climbing, has just a really good, like, close-mic'd, dry, tactile sound of grabbing onto a rock and maybe some, like, clothes rustling or, like, backpack rustling as you're climbing a surface until you get to the top, or until you fall. So, like, as long as the main actions, the main verbs in the game have, like, a toy-like sound, then it will feel like you're playing as you develop a game. And I think that just makes it all the more motivating to continue a game. I also want to bring up Untitled Goose Game. That game has a lovely collection of Foley sounds that were recorded pretty much in the environments that they take place in, you know, an outside neighborhood, by M. Halberstadt. And they're great, because to record those sounds, you kind of have to think like the goose that you play as. How can I create kind of chaotic sounds? And I also want to bring up Untitled Goose Game, because the music, which was arranged by Dan Golding, is a series of excerpts of preludes by Claude Debussy. And they're adaptive. They rendered Debussy's music into an adaptive form. There's like one layer that's calm excerpts from the preludes. There's one layer that's chaotic, frenetic excerpts from the preludes. And the top layer only plays when you are specifically getting chased away by one of the neighbors in this neighborhood. And that leads me to adaptive reactive sounds, or music. This is still an idea that comes from the world of physical toys. Toys, especially modern toys, are designed to react to your actions and make you discover different interactions that help you, you know, perform your own fun with that particular toy. But it has infected all sorts of video games with excellent ways that you are rewarded for interacting with the game with a sound that reacts to you. Some more great examples: Ape Out. I highly recommend that one. Sound by Matt Bach, and it's a constant percussion-only soundtrack. It's really engaging. It's really aggressive, because you are playing as an ape that is trying to escape captivity, and every time you score a hit against one of the guards, just a cymbal crash gets added every time. And Matt Bach has described it feels kind of like the game is becoming a musical instrument. You know, it's playing this sample of percussion, and then you are playing the cymbal part by playing the game. And I can't tell you, like, I don't know for sure, but I feel that the developers would have felt the same. They would have felt they're playing their own game like a musical instrument while creating it. Another extremely radically different example is Cloud Gardens, with sounds by Amos Roddy and Mark Robertson. And their whole soundtrack is just like small collections of ambient synth sound effects. They're very chill. They're all very soft, but they aren't really added in any particular order. They populate a scene in the same way that you populate the dioramas in the game with foliage and plants, because that's just the object of the game. It's a very chill game. But the sounds are still reacting to your actions, and I think the experience would kind of fall apart were it not for the sounds that you get as a reward for creating the diorama that you want. That also leads me into chance sounds. This one doesn't occur as often, I would say, in video game sound design, but it really ought to more often, because not being able to expect what a game will give you, especially as you're creating that game, is really just riveting. It would make me want to experience the game more often and get that rare, weird interaction between sound effects or different elements of a game. Some of my favorite examples: The Blob 2, or even just the whole The Blob series, sound by John Guscott, already has a really funky soundtrack by the Bamboos. But whenever you paint a surface in that game, you get a tiny bit of a live instrument soloing over the music that's already playing. And the choice of instrument will depend on the color, but the exact solo that they play is randomized. It is chosen from 250 plus samples of what an instrument could play. And they smartly recorded it such that it will always be in harmony with wherever the music is, but it will never play the same solo twice. And that's just really cool. And that makes you want to complete the game more and more just to hear more of the instruments that get added. Minecraft, of course, has famous examples of chance sounds when you go spelunking and you've spent a really long time in caves and suddenly you hear this weird noise coming from a couple blocks to your left and you try like checking it out and nothing's actually there. Minecraft is full of spooky cave noises that kind of make it feel like your character is going a little stir-crazy, spending that much time underground. And if I were developing a game like Minecraft and I put in a 1 in 1,000 chance that you hear this sound on any particular second, I would want to play the game a lot. I would want to test the game a lot to encounter that rare event by chance. Now, you know I can't give a presentation without bringing up my favorite game of all time, Pikmin 2, which not only has randomized music when you enter the caves in the game, it's procedural music. All of the elements of the music are just little pieces of MIDI, like puzzle pieces, designed by Kazumi Totaka and Hajime Wakai, and a sound system to put it all together by Mitsuhiro Hikino. Each of these pieces will be constructed in real time, in random orders, into something that still ends up being coherent music, just because it follows a beat. And it's one of my favorite systems in a game of all time, because you'll never hear the same song twice, even though it's made of the same pieces. And I just feel that's what makes it so riveting, for me at least, to just vibe in one of those caves, to just spend time in it, listening to the music. It doesn't get old to me because it keeps randomizing. You keep encountering sounds by chance. And I think that's the feeling that I'm going for here. The idea that the game does not get old to you, that it keeps surprising you, or that it keeps feeling just more fun, like it's satisfying to complete whatever actions you've put in a game. That's why you should borrow from film and borrow from toys. To feel more like a filmmaker or a toy maker as you build your game. And I also think you should just build your own toys. I do it all the time as a composer and a sound designer. Just build tiny instruments of any kind. Don't spend more than a day on it. Maybe even an hour. Don't spend more than an hour just creating a simple little toy for yourself. It could be, in my case, a sound machine or an instrument. It could also be a shader or a way of like producing textures in your game. I'll give a couple examples. Roland Rascal needed a wind machine to apply whenever you're at high speed, and the wind needed to pick up the faster you're going. I'm not sure if we're going to necessarily hear the first part here because it's pretty subsonic, but we'll give it a go. Okay, barely hear it. So this is just white noise. It's randomizing its pitch a little, and the resonance is turned up pretty high. As you get faster, higher octaves of white noise get added on. It's a little bit of the high wind. It's a little hard to hear. There we go. As you get to really high speeds, the super wind will kick in, which is really especially high octave. It feels like it's buffeting against your ears or your clothes that you feel when you're going, hundreds of miles an hour. All of this is just white noise. I put this together in like 15, 30 minutes. But it's all, what tied it all together to me is that it's all a group of instruments, a bus of instruments that is playing at once. So I can press one note on a keyboard and instantly get wind. And then, I can layer different amounts of wind with the sliders to play with it, to add whatever amount that I want. And that's where it became a little toy for me. It's a little toy of an instrument. I have a couple other examples because it's not just MIDI, it's not just synthetic sounds, it's also Foley sounds. I made a video about Mario Kart and the Doppler effect in the games, the series, and I needed a way to convey, to explain the Doppler effect. So I wanted to play physics teacher for a little bit. I modeled this wooden lathed cart in Blender, and I needed for it to make sound as it traveled down a track. So this is a combination of a Hot Wheels car that I'm rubbing against my hand, a wooden guiro, a couple of, I think, wooden-shaped shells, whatever I had around me that I put together, and I think I tried to make it a little cartoonishly clear what's going on, because this kind of cart would not make that much noise. But putting together a bunch of wooden toys like that made this sound a toy to me. I can now use it wherever I want. I made it loopable so I can use it for however long I want. The same thing goes for another Foley sound that I needed for a game jam that I was working on, where you play as a little marble that is rolling across a plastic world that you can tilt to move. So I needed a sound of a marble rolling across plastic. And I had a marble, thankfully, so I could record it myself. So I had a little toy making session of going out to the porch of where I was staying at the time, find this exact kind of lawn chair, struggle to bring it in through the door into the room where I recorded stuff. And the grooves in the back of this chair were perfect. They fit the marble perfectly. So I followed it with my field recording mic and created this sound. Cut out there a little bit, but it's designed to loop forever. And now I just have that sound. I can use it wherever I want. And it represents a little toy for me, something that I had fun making and that I'll have fun using from now on. Once you create any toys like this, I want you to become the best player in the world at your doohickey. Practice at whatever instrument you've created. Become a virtuoso, the best in the world, so that you can teach anyone else how to use it. And then don't stop at just little toys. Combine all these little toys into a scene and make yourself a little vignette of a game. It doesn't have to have a win condition. It doesn't have to have necessarily even an ending. But just putting these together, and especially collaborating with other people who have made their own toys, will allow you to see through the ending of a production, to feel like you have accomplished this game, and that it feels like more than the sum of its parts. And that's why I also encourage you to join game jams. I'm sure you don't need to hear that from me, but the deadline of a game jam will help you a lot with quickly thinking through how to construct and synthesize the different little toys that you have made. Finally, I want to stress that amid all of this, because I've given you a lot of information just now, please still take care of yourself. If you are constantly working through all of this and you keep having new ideas and you keep iterating on them, and you don't rest and digest all of the work that you've just done for a good amount of time, you're only doing half of your job. The rest is part of the job here. And I also just want to stress, as an audio designer, please rest your ears as well, specifically. Take your headphones off and just let your ears breathe for a while. If you need to test audio, the best way to do it is with home speakers. If you don't have a speaker system, then please just go for open over the ear, open back headphones. And if you can afford it, please ditch your earbuds. Your ears will thank you in the long term with their health and their hearing. I just want to throw that in there. But also, there's no need to play games like you mean it and make games like you mean it all the time. there's plenty of inspiration that comes from all the other different stories, from all the other different media, and just real life that will inspire you. So always just keep in mind how much you're playing, how much you're working, how much the two kind of blend together, and take a break from all of that. Just have some fun in the meantime. Life is always going to throw both that inspiration and all the challenges that I mentioned before at you, no matter what, even when you've finished a game. But I hope I have given you some general practices today and just some cool information that will inspire you to keep getting back up in the face of any of these challenges and just doing what you love. Thank you.